your blood work is normal and everything is fine is something that people hear a lot of the time, but they are not encouraged by it. And I think a lot of it has to do with immediate public access to MyChart results. And now there's pros and cons to this. The pro is patients have ownership over their care. They have immediate results. They don't have to wait for things. However, the vast majority of the time, they don't have the training necessary to interpret those results. And this even happens in the emergency department. People will have their results on their phone before I'm able to circle around and talk to them. And I think there's some harm introduced that way. Because if they read that their BMP and their magnesium and their white count, or they're slightly anemic, or they're a little macrocytic and it's slightly abnormal, the whole thing on MyChart will just come up with a big yellow abnormal or red critically abnormal. But that doesn't mean it's clinically significant. So usually I'll start that conversation with abnormal doesn't mean clinically significant. And abnormal does not necessarily mean uncommon either. A lot of these lab ranges are based off of percentiles within a given population. There are different parts of the state where ALT and AST will be a slightly different range depending on where you're located geographically. But that's not usually what patients care about, because if I come and say like, oh, you're only like the 75th percentile for transaminitis, that's not so bad. That's not an encouraging thing to say. So let's keep with the liver example, right? So let's say the AST and ALT are 60, and that comes up as a red number in a lot of lab tests. I'll say, when we think about abnormal liver tests, here are some of the things we think about. We think about alcohol-related changes. That's usually in the 100 to 200s range. You think about hepatitis. That's in the 500s-ish. You think about shock liver, acetaminophen overdose. That's in the thousands, right? Some viral syndromes like mono or Epstein-Barr virus can cause a transaminitis in the hundreds. In the setting of trauma, in pediatrics, right? If you're wary to CT scan a child, but their lipase is up, their LFTs are up, now you're starting to be a little more concerned for acute abdominal injury. So maybe even though it's slightly abnormal, you can have that discussion with the guardian or the family member and say, this is why I'm worried about an abdominal injury more than I got punched in the chest and I'll get a little better. And I've said this before, patients by and large don't want you to know everything. They just want to feel like you're not fooling them, like you're not withholding information from them, like you're not trying to dismiss their concern and send them home and say, everything's fine. So it's like everything else. You don't need to know everything. You just need to not be a jerk. And 80% of the time, that's just enough.